The Caribbean sun on September 17, 2025, was brilliant and unforgiving, casting a diamond-like shimmer across the turquoise waters of the port of Crolendijk, Bonaire. For the nearly 4,000 guests aboard the colossal Carnival Horizon, it was another idyllic day in an 8-day Southern Caribbean cruise, a carefully curated escape from the mundane. Passengers disembarked in a vibrant stream of laughter and anticipation, fanning out across the small Dutch island to explore its famed coral reefs, tranquil beaches, and rugged national parks. Among them was Jessica Collins, a 47-year-old American tourist. Surveillance cameras on the ship captured a fleeting image of her just before she stepped onto the gangway. She was dressed for the tropical heat in a bright, short-sleeved Hawaiian-style shirt, jean shorts, and slippers, a large gray backpack strapped securely to her shoulders. She was, by all accounts, traveling alone. Like hundreds of others that morning, she walked off the floating city and into the warm embrace of the island. But unlike them, she would not return as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the pier. The Carnival Horizon sounded its horn, signaling its imminent departure. The stream of passengers reversed, their faces flushed with sun and salt, their bags filled with souvenirs. But one passenger was missing from the count. When Jessica Collins failed to reboard, the ship's crew initiated standard procedure. An alarm was raised, a report was filed, and the vessel, adhering to its strict schedule, sailed away, leaving the mystery of its missing passenger behind in the quiet port. The next morning, on Thursday, September 18th, the disappearance was formally reported to the Dutch Caribbean Police Force by a local cruise ship contact. A full-scale search was launched immediately, a broad and urgent response predicated on the grim understanding that in any missing persons case, every second counts. But this was not to be a standard case. As authorities began their work, the mystery deepened, complicated by a single, baffling communication. A member of the Carnival care team, attempting to reach the missing passenger, received a text message. The message claimed to be from Jessica. It said she was safe and did not want to be found or contacted again. This message cleaved the case in two. For the cruise line, it was evidence of a deliberate action to be alone, a personal choice to abandon the cruise and start anew. For law enforcement, however, a text message was not proof of life. It was an anonymous, unverifiable claim that could be a desperate plea for help as easily as it could be a declaration of independence. The search, they declared, would continue unabated. Jessica Collins now existed in a paradoxical state, officially a missing person, the subject of an active police search, yet simultaneously a woman who had, by her own supposed account, found exactly what she was looking for. This is the story of that paradox. It is an investigation into a disappearance that forces us to question the very meaning of being lost, and to ask whether a cryptic message from the void is a sign of liberation, or the first, masterfully deceptive move in a far more sinister plot. The last known hours, the journey began on Saturday, September 13th, 2025, when the Carnival Horizon, a titan of the seas with a capacity for nearly 4,000 guests, slipped its moorings in Miami, Florida. It was the start of an 8-day voyage through the Southern Caribbean, the anatomy of a disappearance in the critical hours and days following Jessica Collins's failure to return to the Carnival Horizon. A complex and often contradictory picture of her disappearance began to emerge. The investigation was immediately complicated by two key pieces of evidence: the note left in her cabin and the text message sent to the cruise line. These communications, coupled with conflicting statements from corporate and official sources, created a fog of uncertainty that has defined the case ever since. The first piece of the puzzle was the thank you note and cash gratuity left for her stateroom attendant. This small gesture speaks volumes. It suggests a clear state of mind, calm, organized, and considerate. It is an act of closure, inconsistent with someone in distress, in a panic, or being abducted. It was the first strong indicator that her departure from the ship was not just intentional, but planned with a degree of cool-headedness. The second, and most crucial, piece of evidence was the text message. As the ship's crew and, later, the authorities in Bonaire began their search, a member of the Carnival care team who had been trying to contact Jessica received a text in response. The message was concise and deeply ambiguous. It stated that she was safe and did not want to be found or contacted again. This communication became the central pivot upon which the entire case would turn. It offered a simple, if unusual, explanation. Jessica had chosen to leave. Yet, for the island's sanctuary to understand the disappearance of Jessica Collins, one must first understand the island of Bonaire. It is a place of profound contradictions, a landscape that is simultaneously a sanctuary of safety and a wilderness of stone and thorn. This dual nature makes it both an idyllic tourist destination and, for someone wishing to disappear, the perfect vanishing point that be why almost every metric. Bonaire is one of the safest islands in the entire Caribbean. The U.S. Department of State has awarded it a Level 1 travel advisory, the lowest and safest rating possible, advising visitors simply to exercise normal precautions. This assessment is echoed by other international bodies and travel safety indices, which consistently rank Bonaire as a low-crime area. The island's small population fosters a high degree of social control, and its police force is considered professional and responsive. The crimes that do occur are typically non-violent and opportunistic, petty thefts from unattended cars or unlocked hotel rooms. Violent crime, especially against tourists, is exceedingly rare. This well-established reputation for safety is a key part of Bonaire's appeal, drawing tourists who seek tranquility over the crowded and sometimes perilous atmosphere of other Caribbean destinations. This statistical safety, however, is set against a backdrop of a rugged and demanding natural environment. While the island is small, covering just 111 square miles, a significant portion of its terrain is wild and remote. An island that can be circumnavigated by car in just a few hours also contains over 300 kilometers of nature trails, many of which are challenging and isolated. The northern end of the island is dominated by the Washington Slagby National Park, a 14,000-acre sanctuary of protected wilderness. This is not a manicured park, but a raw landscape of volcanic hills, ancient limestone terraces, dry forests thick with towering cacti, and a rugged, windswept coastline. The park contains the island's highest peak, Mount Branderis, which stands at 790 feet. The trail to its summit is classified as a medium difficulty climb over steep, rocky terrain, a hike that authorities recommend starting before noon to avoid the debilitating afternoon heat. Another route, the Cassicund Climbing Trail, is considered even more challenging due to its steepness and the large rocks that hikers must scramble over. The island's geology, a result of ancient coral reefs being pushed up from the seafloor, has also created a landscape dotted with caves. This paradoxical landscape offers a unique set of possibilities for someone like Jessica Collins. If her intention was to disappear and start a new life, Bonaire presents an ideal location. The island's safety would have allowed her to disembark and move about freely without the immediate fear of becoming a victim of crime. She could have felt secure in executing her plan. Simultaneously, the vast, unpopulated areas of the national park or the island's less-traveled eastern coast could provide near-perfect seclusion. With the right skills and preparation, a person could potentially live off-grid for a significant period, hidden within the island's folds of rock and cactus. Conversely, this same landscape offers a tragic alternative. If Jessica, after leaving the populated area of Kralendijk, decided to go for a solo hike, the environment itself poses a significant threat. A lone hiker on a challenging trail like the Cassicund could easily become disoriented, suffer a fall, or succumb to dehydration in the intense Caribbean sun. In such a vast and rugged area, a search and rescue operation would be incredibly difficult. She could have met with an accident, her disappearance a consequence not of foul play, but of the unforgiving nature of the wilderness she chose to enter. This unique geography creates a strategic challenge for investigators. The very factors that make Bonaire safe also make it difficult to investigate a disappearance. The low crime rate means there is no significant criminal underworld to cultivate for informants or leads. The vast, rugged parkland, with its limited accessibility, makes a comprehensive physical grid search a monumental, resource-intensive task. The island's character, its combination of profound safety and untamed wilderness, simultaneously empowers the person wishing to disappear while disempowering those tasked with finding them. The qualities that make Bonaire a paradise for tourists are the same qualities that make it a perfect place to vanish without a trace. Echoes in the Caribbean. See, the news of Jessica Collins' disappearance from a cruise ship in the Caribbean did not land in a vacuum. It landed in a media and public consciousness already shaped by decades of maritime mysteries, chief among them the haunting and unsolved case of Amy Lynn Bradley. The story of Jessica Collins became instantly intertwined with the ghost of Amy Bradley. And understanding this connection is crucial to understanding the public and media reaction to the events in Bonaire that on March 24, 1998, Amy Lynn Bradley, a vibrant 23-year-old American, vanished from the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas as it sailed between Aruba and Curaçao, not far from Bonaire. She was on vacation with her parents and brother. Her father last saw her asleep on their cabin's private balcony between 5:15 and 5:30 a.m. By 6 a.m., she was gone, leaving behind only her sandals. Her family immediately reported her missing and pleaded with the ship's crew to halt the docking in Curaçao and to make a ship-wide announcement. But their requests were initially denied. The official search of the ship and the surrounding waters yielded nothing, leading to initial speculation that she had fallen overboard or died by suicide. Her family, however, has always maintained that she was abducted. Their belief is bolstered by a series of disturbing details from the night before she disappeared, including reports that some crew members had paid her uncomfortable attention. In the years that followed, several unconfirmed but tantalizing sightings were reported. A U.S. Navy petty officer claimed to have seen a woman who identified herself as Amy Bradley in a brothel in Curaçao in 1999, where she begged him for help. In 2005, a photo surfaced on an adult website showing a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Amy, an image that an FBI forensic analysis determined could indeed be her. These sightings fueled the terrifying theory that Amy Bradley had been kidnapped and forced into sexual slavery for over 2 decades. Amy Bradley's case has remained one of the most infamous and chilling mysteries in the true crime world. Then, in July 2025, just 2 months before Jessica Collins stepped off the Carnival horizon, Netflix released a new, high-profile documentary series titled Amy Bradley is Missing. The series brought the case roaring back into the public eye, introducing it to a new generation and sparking renewed interest and speculation globally. This timing is not a coincidence. It is a critical piece of context. News reports covering the Jessica Collins case almost immediately drew a direct line between the two events. As outlets like LA Bible noted, the Collins case sparked global interest, particularly as it comes just a couple of months after Netflix's documentary on Amy Bradley. The media recognized that for their audience, the framework for understanding a cruise ship disappearance in the Caribbean had just been freshly reinforced. While the two cases share superficial similarities, both involve American women vanishing during a Caribbean cruise vacation, their core details are starkly different. Amy Bradley disappeared from the ship itself in the middle of the night, seemingly against her will, leaving her family and most of her belongings behind. Jessica Collins, in contrast, disappeared from shore in the middle of the day, after packing all her belongings and leaving communications that explicitly stated it was her choice. Despite these fundamental differences, the narrative power of the Amy Lynn Bradley story proved overwhelming. The Bradley case had established a terrifying narrative template for what can happen on a cruise ship, a story of predatory crew, human trafficking, and a corporate response perceived as inadequate. When the news about Jessica Collins broke, many in the public and media reflexively applied this template. The ambiguities of the Collins case, the cryptic text, the conflicting reports, were filtered through the sinister certainties of the Bradley narrative. The possibility of foul play, even with little direct evidence, seemed more plausible because it fit a story people had just been told. The public debate surrounding Jessica Collins, therefore, was never solely about the evidence in her own case. It was profoundly influenced by the emotional weight and narrative momentum of a completely separate, decades-old mystery that had been recently revitalized. This phenomenon demonstrates a powerful aspect of modern true crime culture: how past media narratives can create a cognitive bias, shaping the interpretation of present events. The specter of Amy Bradley provided a prepackaged, sinister explanation that, for many, was more compelling and emotionally resonant than the ambiguous reality of Jessica Collins' own actions. The ghost of one missing woman was already haunting the investigation of another. The digital dragnet and the identity maze. As the official investigation by the Dutch Caribbean Police Force proceeded on the ground in Bonaire, a second, parallel investigation exploded into life online. In the digital realm of social media, forums, and comment sections, a chaotic and speculative digital dragnet was cast. This online inquiry was fueled by intense public interest but plagued by misinformation, most notably a case of mistaken identity that sent amateur sleuths down a rabbit hole of conspiracy and speculation. A significant source of the initial confusion stemmed from the commonness of the name, Jessica Collins. When the public began searching for information about the missing 47-year-old American tourist, their search results were flooded with information about several other public figures who share the name. These include Jessica Collins, born Jessica Lynn Capagna, a well-known American actress famous for her roles in soap operas like The Young and the Restless and films such as Catch Me If You Can. There is also Jessie Collins, another American actress from Texas, and Dr. Jessica Collins, an Australian academic and policy expert with the Lowy Institute who specializes in the Pacific Islands. It became immediately clear that the missing woman was not any of these public figures. But the initial overlap created a layer of confusion that had to be peeled back before any real discussion could begin. Once it was established that the missing Jessica Collins was a private citizen, the online investigation quickly latched onto a far more explosive and sensational theory. This theory, which spread rapidly on platforms like Reddit and was subsequently picked up by some online news outlets, claimed that the missing woman was, in fact, Jessica Lee Collins, a woman who has publicly identified herself as a victim of the notorious sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. The origin of this unverified claim appears to be a social media post from a friend of Jessica Lee Collins, which was then amplified by online communities. A post on a Carnival cruise fan subreddit, for example, linked to an article discussing the speculation and referenced a video allegedly made by Jessica Lee Collins in 2019 as a message, "If anything ever happens to me." This theory provided a ready-made, high-stakes narrative for the disappearance. If Jessica Collins was indeed an Epstein victim, her desire to not be found could be interpreted not as a wish for a quiet new life, but as a desperate flight from powerful and dangerous individuals who might wish to silence her. This theory, while entirely uncorroborated by official sources, took on a life of its own because it filled a narrative void. In the early days of the case, official information from the Bonaire police was sparse and methodical. The public was left with a handful of ambiguous facts. A woman was missing, but she had sent a text saying she was fine. Human psychology, especially when confronted with a mystery, abhors such a vacuum. The Epstein theory rushed in to fill that void. It was a complete, compelling, and dramatic story with a clear protagonist, shadowy villains, and a powerful motive. It transformed an ambiguous disappearance into a thrilling tale of conspiracy and survival. This powerful narrative quickly began to overshadow the more mundane, evidence-based theory that Jessica had simply chosen to leave the cruise. The public debate, visible in the comment sections of news articles and on Reddit threads, became a battleground between these two interpretations. Some users logically questioned the method. Why didn't she just fly to that destination instead of wasting all that money on a cruise? Others expressed empathy for the possibility of a planned escape. Some people just don't want to be found. Sounds like she knew, planned it out. Who knows the life she left behind? I wish her happiness, safety, and hopefully a new life. The online sleuths shared news links, compared the conflicting statements from Carnival and the police, and tried to piece together the timeline, demonstrating the now common phenomenon of the citizen detective. The case of Jessica Collins serves as a powerful case study in how information vacuums in the digital age are filled. The most compelling and conspiratorial narrative often gains the most traction, not because of its factual basis, but because of its narrative power. The unverified Epstein connection became a central pillar of the public story because it provided a satisfyingly dramatic explanation for an otherwise perplexing set of facts. This highlights a fundamental tension in the modern true crime ecosystem. the constant battle for control of the narrative between the slow, deliberate pace of official investigation and the rapid, often reckless, storytelling of the online crowd. The competing realities as the days since Jessica Collins was last seen at 3:15 p.m. on September 17th turn into weeks. The investigation remains at a standstill. With no new sightings and no further communication, the case has settled into a state of deep ambiguity. The known facts are few, and they can be assembled to support several vastly different, competing realities. An objective analysis requires weighing the evidence for and against each of the four primary theories that have emerged from the facts, and the speculation surrounding the case. Theory 1, the premeditated escape. The most straightforward theory, and the one publicly endorsed by Carnival Cruise Line, is that Jessica Collins planned and executed her own disappearance to begin a new life. Argument. At 47 years old, for reasons known only to her, Jessica decided to leave her old life behind. She chose a cruise as her method of transport and the safe, welcoming island of Bonaire as her destination. Every action she took was a deliberate step in this plan. Evidence for this theory is strongly supported by her actions. She packed all of her belongings into a single backpack, a clear sign she did not intend to return to the ship. She left a thank you note and a cash tip for her attendant, a gesture of finality and closure. Most significantly, the text message sent to the Carnival care team explicitly stated her desire. She was safe and did not want to be found. Furthermore, such a plan is logistically feasible. As a U.S. citizen, she could legally stay in Bonaire for a limited time and even apply for a residence permit, making it a viable place to start over. Evidence against. The primary argument against this theory is one of efficiency. As many online commentators have noted, taking an expensive, multi-day cruise is a circuitous and costly way to relocate to Bonaire compared to simply buying a plane ticket. Additionally, despite the police search and media attention, there have been no confirmed, independent sightings of her living safely on the island since her disappearance. If she is there, she is maintaining an exceptionally low profile. Theory 2. Coercion and control, foul play. This theory posits that Jessica did not act alone and that her disappearance was orchestrated by a malicious party. Argument. Jessica was either met in Bonaire by someone who meant her harm or was lured off the ship under false pretenses. Her seemingly deliberate actions, the packed bag, the note, the text, were not her own, but were either fabricated or carried out under duress. The purpose of these actions was to create the illusion of a voluntary departure, thereby delaying a police search and giving the perpetrator time to conceal their crime or escape the island with her. Evidence for. The strongest evidence for this theory is the official stance of the Dutch Caribbean Police Force. Their refusal to accept the text message as proof of safety and their insistence on an ongoing, unabated search suggests they have not ruled out foul play. The historical precedent of the Amy Bradley case also looms large, fueling public fears about the potential for abduction and human trafficking in the region, however remote the possibility. The complete and total silence from Jessica since the initial text is also deeply concerning. A person who simply wanted to be left alone might still have made a single, direct call to police to end the search and alleviate her family's worry. Evidence against. There is a significant lack of direct evidence supporting this theory. There were no signs of a struggle. Her departure from the ship was calm and orderly. Most importantly, Bonaire has an extremely low rate of violent crime, making the island an unlikely location for a premeditated abduction. Theory 3. A tragic accident. A third possibility is that Jessica's disappearance is the result of a terrible accident. Argument. After disembarking, Jessica decided to spend her day exploring the island's rugged natural beauty alone. She ventured into Washington Slagby National Park or another remote area and suffered an accident, a fall, dehydration, or another medical emergency, and was unable to call for help. Evidence for. Bonaire's landscape is deceptively dangerous. The heat can be intense, and the terrain in the national park is steep, rocky, and challenging. It is entirely plausible for a lone hiker, even an experienced one, to get into serious trouble. Evidence against. This theory fails to adequately explain her preparatory actions. Why pack all of her belongings and leave a final thank you note if she was only planning a day hike. For this theory to hold, one must believe that she planned to disappear voluntarily and then, coincidentally, had a fatal accident on her very first day. Furthermore, the text message, which was sent after she was already on the island and unaccounted for, complicates the accident scenario. It would require her to have had an accident after sending a message declaring her intention to disappear. Theory 4. An opportunistic crime. This theory is a variation of the foul play scenario, suggesting the crime was not premeditated but a random act of violence. Argument. While exploring the island alone, Jessica was the victim of a robbery or assault that turned fatal. This was not a planned abduction but a crime of opportunity. Evidence 4. The inherent risk of crime exists anywhere in the world. Reports from the Canadian government note that women traveling alone in Bonaire may be subject to some forms of harassment. This suggests a baseline level of risk. Evidence against. This is the least likely scenario based on available data. Bonaire is statistically one of the safest islands in the Caribbean, and crimes against tourists are almost exclusively non-violent, petty thefts. A random, violent crime against a tourist would be a major and highly uncharacteristic event for the island. Like the accident theory, it also doesn't fully align with the evidence of premeditation in her departure from the ship. Each of these theories offers a potential reality, but each is also flawed, leaving critical questions unanswered. The case of Jessica Collins remains a frustrating puzzle, where every piece of evidence seems to fit multiple, mutually exclusive pictures. The unknowable truth. The case of Jessica Collins has reached a profound and unsettling stalemate. On one hand, an official missing persons file remains open with the Dutch Caribbean Police Force, a testament to their legal and moral obligation to verify her safety beyond a shadow of a doubt. On the other, a multinational corporation, Carnival Cruise Line, considers the matter a case of a guest who deliberately chose to end her voyage prematurely, a conclusion supported by a note and a text message. In this strange duality, Jessica Collins exists in a quantum state, officially lost to the authorities, but textually found by the cruise line. She is a ghost in the machine of international travel and law enforcement. The entire mystery hinges on the central paradox that has been present from the very beginning. It is a conflict that pits an individual's presumed right to privacy, and indeed the right to disappear, against the duty of the state and the concern of society to ensure the well-being of its members. If Jessica Collins truly wished to start a new life and be left alone, does the continued search represent a necessary duty of care or an unwanted intrusion? But if the message was not from her or was sent under duress, then that same search is her only hope. We are left to weigh the evidence. But with no further information, the scales remain perfectly, agonizingly balanced that we are drawn back to the first and last images of this story. The surveillance footage of a woman with a full backpack stepping purposefully into the Caribbean sun, and the suggested image of that same lone backpack resting on an empty beach. Is that backpack a symbol of a burden cast off, the only luggage needed for a new, unwritten life? Or is it the last, silent artifact of a life cut tragically short, its owner vanished into the island's rugged interior or the deep blue water just beyond the shore? The truth, for now, remains unknowable, lost somewhere just over the horizon. The evidence points in multiple directions, and the official investigation remains at a standstill. Do you believe Jessica Collins left on her own, a master of her own fate? Or is her cryptic text a sinister piece of misdirection in a case of foul play? Share your theory in the comments below.